Relive it? Yes. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast this week, Coffee with Tamara. I am super excited for today's interview. I want to tell you, we just spent, 15, 20 minutes talking offline, just having a great conversation. I've already learned a few things, so I'm pretty sure that you are too. If you are new here, first of all, welcome. I'm so glad you found us. And I want to let you know that if you are watching live and you have a question, put it in the chat bar. I can see them. This is why we love this format so much. And I really believe in collective wisdom. So if you have a question, somebody else probably has that question. You're going to benefit you with our guest answer, but also other people in our community, and your insights and your wisdom, same thing, right? We all learn from each other. So please engage. If you've been with us for a while, you know the drill. All right, let me introduce today's guest because I want to use all of our time asking her questions. Lesley Jane Seymore is a media entrepreneur, and I feel like that understates actually your career and the things that you've built. So let me just give you a highlight. She has been editor-in-chief, I'm kind of working backwards here, at More Magazine, Marie Claire, and Reebok. So these are all huge media heavy hitters, and editor-in-chief is like the top, just for people who don't know the industry. And you were director at Glamour Magazine, and you've worked with celebrities like, ranging from Michelle Obama to Drew Barrymore to make a positive impact across the globe with kind of more do-good initiatives as well. So with that, Lesley, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Wonderful to be here. It's really exciting.
So I really love when I get people on this podcast who I call varsity players. So people who have, had some experience under their belt. They've seen it. They've been on the roller coaster of the ups and downs. A little bit like me. I've been there. It's been a long time in the business. What advice or how do you think about staying relevant in changing times? Because I do think that we're in particularly uncertain and rapidly changing times, but also I might argue that we've been through this before too.
Oh yeah. I think we are in a crazy sort of whitewater moment where like everything is changing, which is scary because it's hard to get your footing, and especially for women. I was being an editor-in-chief of various magazines and working in magazines. I spent my years working on women's issues and, helping women get rights that now are being rolled back. And it's, it is definitely a changing time. And the way that you stay relevant is you stay involved. And one of the things that I've learned, and it's just it's a natural thing. I mean, Covey Club women, the women that I have been building a community with now, is there are some people out there who just see the world in terms of being a curious place and always being curious about what's next. Now, that's probably what put me into the fashion business somewhat as well, which is trend spotting, always liking something new. I don't have ADHD. I think a lot of people in the business do. But I'm always curious. I always want to see what's next. I always want to see what people are doing that's different. I always want to eat at a new restaurant. I always want to, that's just my personality. And so it sort of dovetailed really well with what I did. If you have that mindset, if you have a constant learning mindset, you will always stay relevant. And that means plugging into what's new, learning new technology, getting involved. Don't stay with people just in your own age group because they all may not be plugging into what's new. Getting involved in your community, getting involved in the next sort of evolution of what your previous sector is. I mean, it's funny listening to you list my like being an editor-in-chief of these magazines. Most people in the past would have been my age and still doing what I did. But that hilariously, for some people listening, they may never have seen a magazine or or known what those magazines are. They're all gone. Like, what is an editor-in-chief of a magazine?
Isn't that, as I was saying it, I was thinking to myself that, I used to love going to the grocery store because I loved magazines. I loved to read the magazines in the grocery store. And now there aren't any to read.
And when I go, because, I'm so used to being in that business. I even trained my kids that when you used to, and this is when we were in the thick of it. This is like in the 2000s and the 2010s, 15s. God, it sounds like ancient history, right?
Yeah.
But we all used to go to our local supermarket, and what we would do is I'm going to give you inside dirt. And so this is how you could tell if you had other competitors in your locality.
Oh.
Is you would pick up the magazine of your competitor. First of all, you want to see where your magazine was displayed as you're checking it, right?
Yeah.
You pick up the magazine of your competitor, you look at it like this, and this is the front here, and then you'd put it in backwards. So that people couldn't see it. And it was like we all did it.
Grassroots tactics.
Guerrilla tactics.
Yeah.
Well, the hilarious thing is I go to the supermarket, I'm like, what are these? Like they're like one-off magazines about baking with beans or like it's just so sad. It's really sad. And what's really, really vexing is I noticed that the big newspapers like the New York Times now have veered into women's magazine territory. They have obviously discovered that the way to maintain readership is to go into the areas that we used to sell, which, magazines had millions and millions and millions of subscribers. But the other day I was looking at the New York Times and I'm like, you're writing an article about should women 50 plus wear a bikini? Like, how is that in the New York Times? It's in the New York Times, like Wordle. They've discovered it brings people in. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Women's magazines died because, well, it wasn't because no one wanted the content. It was because the people on the business side were too stupid to fight off Facebook and Google. That's who ate our advertising lunch. That was the reason why. And but it's really tremendously sad. People still want that information.
Yeah. And they want that connection through the information too. Like I think one of the things the magazines did was actually bring us together. It was like shared conversations.
It was
shared knowledge. So, and I think, and I didn't say this in the beginning because I wanted to spend some time on it, but I think that's part of what Covey Club allows you to do, what you're now the founder of. Will you just real quick talk a little bit about what Covey Club is? And then I know we'll dig into more later, but I don't want to overlook that because we kind of jumped into why that matters now relative to the old school way that we were just talking about.
So Tamara, like what you're saying is that in my mind, magazines were what I would call a flat community. They came in, you would put it on your coffee table and people were like, oh, you're a glamour girl or you're a Cosmo girl. Those are very different. Those are very different people. You were a Vogue person or you were, it was it was a form of, it was like a little badge you would wear in Girl Scouts. Like, this is who I am. It was part of your identity. That all went away. Covey Club, likewise, is a community. But what's wonderful is because of technology, when they closed More magazine, which was the last magazine I ran, I decided I had to keep doing what I did, which was connecting women, teaching them, informing them, giving them a voice. Lucky for me, technology was there to segue me in. Yes, I lost the $55 million budget. Yes, I lost 35 employees, but the basis of it was still able to be done in a virtual way. It's literally the same stuff. We do have a blog. We have a very deep blog, which is the coveyclub.com blog, which is written by fabulous writers around the world, literary people, everything, all kinds of guides and essays and beautiful writing. We're very careful. We don't put crap up there. It's really high level writing. But we teach once a week. We bring in experts to teach about everything from how to get on a board, to leadership skills, to building your personal brand, whatever you want. It's the same stuff we did in women's magazines, but it's live. And now we connect women. We're doing travel. We're taking women around the world. We have a big trip coming up in April. We just finished one that went to the Basque Country, which was really fantastic. We're doing speed networking, which people are really excited about. We have tiny little pods where you can get together with small groups of women to work on your issues, elder care, personal reinvention, career reinvention, podcasting, writing, whatever you might need. We take women and we put them together And amazing things come out of it, so much so that we just added what's called the Covey Club Marketplace, where you can put your wares and your services out there to the community. So many people were hiring each other, and I was hiring everybody, my marketing people, everybody's coming out of my club. Why not? Why would I go to Upwork, right? Yeah. I've got the most amazing, sophisticated, accomplished women in the club. Why would I go to Upwork? I'd rather hire somebody from the club. And everybody else was doing that too, and helping each other launch businesses. So that is what Covey Club is. It's a community of women that provides the services and the support for you to figure out what's next at midlife.
So I love it. And I love how you really have leveraged technology to create this incredible community, and at the same time stay true to what people need and want, which is connection, community, knowledge, right? It's interesting. Every time I've done work with clients, what really resonates with them, and I don't mean this as a put down to myself, but even when I talk and share the insights and the how-tos, it's their conversations with each other that matter the most. So the more time I spend letting them talk, the better everybody is. And like I said before, I believe in collective wisdom. So to me, it's like, why I'm not the only one with knowledge in the room. You guys are the ones doing the work, right? You guys are the ones with the problems or the solutions. So why am I talking? But it's such a gift to people that,
without the facilitator, without somebody to bring us together, it's not going to happen. And a lot of women feel isolated. I mean, we get people, we get people from all around the world. I'll get somebody from, Canada somewhere. And I'm like, so why did you join the club? It's like, I know I need to reinvent myself, but I don't know any women like me nearby. And now that we're all working from home and we're disconnected.
It's isolating.
Yeah, there's so much isolation. That's also one of the core reasons why I bring women together live. We have a big live event coming in New York. We do day live events, is because we know that the health impacts of being in community. It changes your metabolism. It changes your, outcome with Alzheimer's, with, mental issues. We need each other. We need to connect with women like us, and we need to support each other. And now that COVID's behind us, we can do this live, and the live things are just really energizing, really fun. The last live event I did last year in New York, a woman wrote me the most revealing sort of note I'd ever gotten from anybody. I grew up with women. I went to women's schools. I love women. I trust women. Of course, there's some jerky women, just like there's some jerky men. But she wrote me this note. She said, I've never been in a room with women who were so supportive of each other in my lifetime. I'd always written women off as being undermining and competitive. You changed my point of view. I was like, holy moly.
That's wonderful.
Isn't that incredible? And that was one day. We're going to do it again September 10th in New York. So it's wonderful. A one-day event. We do networking. We bring in people to do conversation. I want to do health and well-being, which I'm really excited about.
Well, and I think what you said about being together really matters. I mean, we're tribal. Humans are tribal. We're built for connection, and we're built for not just connection in the sense of like, I live in this neighborhood and you live in this neighborhood, but true connection of we support each other, we contribute to each other. I lean on you, you lean on me. I mean, it's how tribes survived, right? Back in the caveman days.
That's right.
So really, it's really important. And I think something in the remote world that we've lost is that connection, because this is wonderful. And we certainly have made a connection, right? And
and I'm good with it. I mean, you have to be a certain personality to love this. I don't think everybody.
Yeah, but it's not like, it's not the same, right? At the end of the day, it's not the same.
Right. Giving someone a hug is hard to do through.
Yeah, exactly. And that, like, the dopamine hit you get from receiving a hug is hard to get online, but I love that there's a place online that uses the Covey Club, that uses technology to facilitate all of that. Like, that to me is really important, and a piece that we really need moving forward. And I want to dig into reinvention with you. So I just want to share a quick story with you, because I think you, particularly Lesley, will really relate to this. So this is a couple years ago now. This was when digital bloggers and news were coming on the scene in big ways, and newspapers were all kind of in a huff about it, right? And so I live in Denver, and I'll never forget, I was facilitating a conversation with the heads of the Denver newspapers and some other outliers that were big newspapers, okay? And we're sitting there. We starting the conversation, and it's in an old-fashioned boardroom with a big wood table and stuffy chairs and oil paintings of old CEOs on the wall, like typical, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, because we were talking about, well, what are we going to do to be relevant in the future? That was the whole conversation. And the people in the room could not get out of their own way. And one of them in particular, and this was a very big person in the media world, said, we don't need to change. We just need to show people the value of getting that newspaper delivered and really reading the newspaper. And I think this was at the same time when maybe Huffington Post came on the scene, right? It was just changing the way we took. I mean, we didn't even have TikTok yet at this point. Like, they hadn't even seen what was coming. And I just never forget being so baffled at the resistance to change. Yeah, because that's what it was, right? This wasn't a stupid person. Of course not. He built a media empire in the meantime, but the resistance is there. So, and I knew you would understand that story, because it's, the media world, there was a lot of resistance for a while there.
Oh, there was tremendous resistance to change. And
yeah,
I'll give you my theories if you want.
But yeah, well, that's what I kind of wanted to ask you before we go into what you need to do to reinvent yourself, because I think that's really critical, especially because so many of us are having revivals in our 40s and 50s and 60s. Like, it's not the same as our parents,
That's right.
But talk to me about that resistance, where it comes from, how it shows up.
Well, I think that in many cases, for the publishing business, it was a lot of hubris. I think there were an awful lot of people who thought they were smarter than everybody else. They went to fancy schools, they made a lot of money, and they thought they knew better. Yep. This thing was never gonna take off.
It's a fad.
And the business side, really, when the first bust came, remember there was the first round, and that was when I was I was running Mary Claire at the time, where people were leaving publishing and they were getting job offers, and they were going to California, and they were getting, they were getting shares, right? They weren't getting paid much because it was the beginning of the industry. I saw people around me bailing out, and it went on for like 2 years. And it was like, oh my God, are we going to be left behind? There was a whole sort of group of people that left and went to try all these new things. Then it went bust. Remember, it went bust. All these people. And I was like, whoo, wow, thank God I stayed with the old legacy thing, right? What we didn't realize is that it was kind of like, I don't know if you saw the movie Alien with Sigourney Weaver.
Yes, years ago, yes.
But there's a moment in Alien where that thing like gestates in someone's stomach, and then it comes really gross. It comes out of the stomach, like birthing.
It's in the diner. He's in the diner or whatever.
And it just eats everybody. That's what happened. Everybody thought they were like, oh, we told you it was going out of business, blah, blah, blah. Look at all these people. And they didn't realize, they closed their ears. They did not stay relevant. They did not stay aware. And the biggest problem was that the money guys at the top did not change how people were compensated. That was the biggest issue.
Oh, interesting.
People stayed compensated on selling print ads, even though it was very clear that the internet was coming up. And they could see it, but they were like, no one wanted to change that part. So like in my budget at More, which was completely insane, I could pay you $3,500 for an article in the magazine, but my internet budget was zero. I was supposed to get you to, and
the money was going to the wrong place.
I was going to make you write that article for free. You were going to write for free. Like, what are you talking about, people? Like, they just thought, this is garbage. It's just advertising. It's not really content. Ignore it. And it was foolish. And that's what killed everything. It's really sad. So anyway,
I feel like that's the case a lot. Like, Sears knew online was coming, but their printed magazine, if anybody even remembers or knows what I'm talking about, that used to come to your door, that was like
what were those called? Catalog.
Yeah, catalog. That's I can't even remember the word. And I used to earmark them as kids.
No one knows what you don't know what a catalog is. Explain to them.
So a catalog is like Amazon, but in paper, right? Like you would go through the Sears catalog
in a magazine format. Huge. Yeah.
And it would have all the products, all the jeans, all the shirts, all the tools, all the whatever. It was a department store.
right?
But what really screwed them wasn't being surprised by the internet and online shopping. It wasn't a surprise. It's because they thought, no, our catalog is so successful, we don't need to change.
Correct.
And I think we see that Circuit City decided that software in a box with CD-ROMs was where they should invest all their money.
Yes.
So they're no longer around. So it's that hubris you were talking about. And I actually think it kind of goes back to what you said in the beginning about staying relevant, which is staying curious and staying involved. I really like the way you said that. I just want our listeners to really hear that, because to me, that is key. I spend time every day trying to learn something new or understand something I don't understand, or like I'm deep in AI trying to figure it all out.
I'm playing around with AI. I'm having so much fun.
Chat and I are like best friends now, but
that's my best friend. You can't have Chat as your best friend. That's my best friend.
The best. But I think it takes effort, and it takes a little bit of a realization of what I know isn't enough right now. And I don't think that's bad. I don't think that's a bad thing to admit, but that's the truth for so many of us.
Well, and I'll tell you, that's one of the dangers. It's one of the stereotypes that I hate the most. And it's not true when you look at facts and figures. Like AARP has blown that out of the water. One of the reasons why older people don't get hired now is people say they're not keeping up with the technology. They don't know what's going on. But I will tell you, and the numbers on that are not what you would think. It's not like 90%, but there is a big segment that, and I see this at Covey Club among older women who don't know the technology at all and have not learned it. They don't know what they're doing, even just for basic things to connect and go on Facebook and all this stuff. And they don't realize that this is what's holding you back. You cannot today not know how to operate WordPress or operate, it's like I was looking for an editor at one point, and I had a wonderful person, a bunch of people I was working with who was helping with the blog. And I didn't go to the one person who wanted it. And she came back to me and said, "Why didn't you come to me?" And I said, "Because I went to somebody who was digital first." You didn't know. You would make a piece, which was really nice, but I had to have the assistant post it because you didn't learn how to post it.
Yeah.
Like, I can't have somebody like that. We can't operate like that. That's just not, like, even my little thing. You have to know the technology, and it's constantly changing. It's a pain in the ass, and it's terrifying. And you always feel like you're going to push a button and you're going to blow something up. And I've done that with Covey Club. I have pushed the wrong button and crashed the site.
I have done that as well.
But I learned how to bring it back also.
Yeah.
And these are the things we have to do. And it's hard because it's a very different feeling in the brain for people over 50 than it is for my kids. My kids are very comfortable with it. With us, it creates all kinds of anxiety. I totally understand. I relate. But you've got to push past that, and you have to be relevant. If you are not relevant, you really will not get another job. It's totally, and if you're not putting your competencies, and if you're not learning stuff, and you don't have that section in your resume, you will be thrown out.
Yeah. Well, and I think it shows up too in really basic things. I interviewed someone the other day for a job, and they couldn't get their camera to work.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
They just didn't know how. It wasn't because they were having a malfunction. We all have malfunctions. Correct. But they just didn't know how to make it work. And to me, that's such a fundamental, simple, but I not to get too far in the weeds on all the things that I've had to learn and all the questions I asked my two teenage boys about stuff. I mean, it's all right here, right? You can be on this and figure it out, which is amazing.
I've learned to do that, Tamara. And I'll tell you, my son is in tech. He's a software engineer. And when I finally said to him, "Well, what do you do when you can't figure that?" He said, "We all Google." He said, "Every person Googles the answer. What if I don't know it? I'm going to Google it. You may as well Google it yourself." And I'm like, okay, so that's what I do. Whenever I get stuck now, you can actually just Google almost anything. Put in
almost anything.
My camera on Mac Pro is not working.
Well. And it's so YouTube has every how-to you could possibly imagine. I wanted to change out the battery in my car, and I wanted to teach my son how to do it. and I don't know what I'm doing. So we went on to YouTube and figured it out. And to me, that's the same though as the curiosity around technologies. You have to really be willing. And the beauty is things like we were talking about chat being both of our best friend. Apparently chat is cheating on me with you. Didn't know that.
Yes.
I think with a lot of people,
yeah,
millions of people. But you can play around with it without consequence. So it's not like the ability to test stuff out isn't there for all of us in some way. But I really, technology aside for a second, overall, right? Or maybe not aside, maybe higher up from that is stay curious, stay involved, and put yourself out there to learn new things.
Yes.
And even if you don't use it, it's worth the time to learn, because to your point, that's about staying relevant. I also think, and this is kind of where I want to start to get your perspective on reinvention. We're in a time where the ability to adapt and to innovate and to think differently and to be resilient are the most important skills. Your job skills are cost of entry. They're not what set you apart anymore. So you got to have those skills to succeed, but that includes reinvention. So what is reinvention, and how the heck do we, especially those of us like varsity players who've been doing it a certain way for a while?
Well, I mean, reinvention, some people say they don't like the word reinvention because it's too big. It sounds like everything that went before was not okay, that you have to throw it out and start again. I say reinvention, reimagination, rethink, reboot, however you want to think of the RE word, whatever level of high or low. It could be as small as upping your tech skills. It could be as small as, I want to move from one side of this business to the other side, which I see has got a bigger future. Like in publishing, we had the ad side, we had the edit side, somebody wanting to switch sides. Or it can be gigantic, like what I did. I mean, I decided that as part of my reinvention, I had to leave the sleepy suburb I grew my kids in. And I wanted to go to a place that would be for me as an adult now, and would be exciting and interesting and take me out of my sort of quiet zone and stretch me. And so we moved to New Orleans, and it's been a complete, you push that button and you say, did we do the right thing? And the whole thing has been, let's try it. Let's see, we're in our 60s. What the heck? Why are we hanging around this boring suburb? Our kids, it was fabulous for kids, but not great for adults. And it was the best thing I ever did. And it makes you reevaluate everything and restart everything. And there is a joy and a pleasure at pushing yourself when you're a little older into new territories that make you grow and expand, because your mind becomes open again to things you thought were already sealed or figured out. And you have to like that feeling. You have to be somewhat of an adventurer. I am not a physical adventurer. Don't ask me to do bungee jumping. I'm a mental adventurer. Give me a book on something I've never read before that will stretch my mind. I'm interested. I mean, I had to learn how to do SEO for my site, for instance. I either had to find the money to pay somebody an exorbitant amount of money, which I don't have right now, or I wanted to understand what was I paying for. So I got into it. I started reading about it. I learned about it. I got myself SEMrush, and I started, and I can't say I'm fabulous at it, but I'm good enough. And I found it very rewarding and very interesting, because it turned out that what's so interesting about SEO, which is search engine optimization for content, it's kind of like being an editor-in-chief for a magazine. An editor-in-chief for a magazine.
What do people want?
What do people want? You had to come up with a headline and a deck. The difference was with print, you had one shot. You put it out there on the newsstand. It lived, it failed. You said the wrong wording. You didn't say it right. What I love about SEO is you can go into the back of your article and you can search and see what people are actually looking for, which is not necessarily how editors put stuff out there. Nobody goes out there looking for 101 ways to save time. That's how we talk. That's right. But what they're looking for is time saving or time management. And so you learn to think more like the consumer. And what's great about SEO is you can take an old article that has evergreen content that can always be relevant, and you can play with the back end and put it out there again and see, do people like that better? Do they like, it's the same thing. It's kind of like, like taking a piece of clothing and just changing, the collar or
the jewelry or
right. Yeah. And you're like, look at that. It looks completely new. And that's very rewarding from my point of view. And I found it really interesting. So I do the SEO. I've learned I can't edit a video to save my life. I hate it. It is not for me. You'll give me the tiniest little video to edit. It sits in my queue for a month. I won't touch it. I hand it off to a VA. They go, they literally take the phone, they hold their thumb on it and they go, how do you want it? And they go like this, like this, like this. And we're done in less than 5 minutes. So you learn what you like to learn and what you don't like to learn. And you have to let go of the stuff you don't like. You're just not going to. Certain things are going to appeal to you. Other things are not. But there are always, and who would have thought I'd be interested in SEO? Like that's not anything in my background would suggest that, except for writing cover lines. If you see the equation for that.
Yeah. But there's something about SEO I feel, because I did the same thing. So part of my stance as a small business owner, and maybe this waste time on the front end, is I like to understand it before I pass it off.
That's why I did that. Exactly.
So I really enjoy learning SEO, social media algorithms, editing video. Like, not that I want to do that stuff all the time and long term.
You want to understand.
Yeah, but there's something really satisfying in learning a new skill. And in fact, research has shown, right, it actually changes your brain for the better. You make new connections. And the beauty of those new connections is that they don't just benefit you in the skill you're learning, they benefit you across everything that you do, because your brain is opened up.
That's right.
So I love it. I mean, that to me, Lesley, what you're saying is a great example of living what you're talking about, which is being curious and learning. And okay, so sometimes that comes from having to be resourceful, right? When you own a small business, you don't get to you don't have the big budgets that big companies do, right? Where they're like $1 million, just do it. Nobody's going to even notice, right? It's not how it works for small businesses.
No.
But there's such a joy and satisfaction in learning something new. You just got to put up with a little bit of pain on the front end where it feels really out of reach. Because I felt with SEO, when I first looked at it, I was like, what the heck am I? What?
And it's still, I'm learning and I'm no expert.
Yeah. Well,
it's kind of fascinating, and it pushes your brain. What I think for people over the age of 40, what you have to realize is this stuff really works a different part of the brain. I can tell you, it feels like, if you think of a massage and how massage feels on your body, this is like a different massage. Like, my brain feels like different things are happening when I'm working in technology. Now, I don't know that my daughter would say that. I think it's so natural to her that the brain is already set that way for her. I'm struggling against something, but I can feel the exercise, and I also feel the excitement when I get something even small, like, oh, look at that. That's what I did. And then that's what happened. Isn't that interesting? I could figure that out. And when I pushed that button, the whole thing did not explode, which is what I know a lot of people feel, is that they push the button, they're never going to get back out. They're going to blow up the whole thing. It's some weird pre-technology. It probably goes back to caveman times where we're afraid to touch a button. It's a really interesting thing, but everybody feels that way.
I know. It's not surprising. And we're in the age of experimentation, I think.
No, I like that.
Yes. Yeah, I really believe that. And I think that's true, whether we're experimenting with technology or with our careers and our life and our decisions and our ideas. I mean, you talked about doing this huge, bold move of moving to New Orleans, and it worked. But if it hadn't worked, you would have figured it out and kept going. It's not, it's not the button that's going to explode everything. Most of the things we do aren't.
That's what you have to think about things as, most things are figure outable, as they say, and most things are rectifiable.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I said to my husband, when we bought this house down here, it's like, okay, if we don't like it in a few years, we'll move again. Yeah. I don't want to, but if we had to, we would. So otherwise you don't make any changes. Otherwise, if you come to it from a place of fear, you will not make any changes. And you have to have what's called, there's a lot of studies, I'm sure you know all about this, about open mindset and closed mindset. Closed mindset says, this is the way it is, always has been, cannot change. So it's all stop. And you can change your mindset to be an open mindset. If you think about things instead and say, that's the way it was in the past, but it doesn't have to be that way in the future. And I'm going to gamble on it not being that way in the future. And I'm going to look out there and see what other people like me have done. I mean, one of the great things we do at Hobby Club is we show you hundreds and hundreds of people who have made these changes. I have a podcast called Reinvent Yourself with Lesley Jane Seymore. I've interviewed over, I think we're at about 300 people. I can't remember, but it's been going for 7 years. And I'm telling you that if you scroll through those show notes, you will find somebody like you who has had to make a big reinvention, or wanted to make a big reinvention, or made a small reinvention, or has had to reinvent a whole category of things. I mean, people with money, with no money, people with contacts and no contacts, people who don't even have the ability to use their whole body, people coming from publishing who went into banking, or banking to publishing. I mean, it is a mindset. And then you meet the people who are multiple reinventors. And then those are really fascinating, because those people are just like, yeah, I got tired of that, and so I went on to this. And I'm like, wow. And they make these changes. It's just it's like, yeah, I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. I went, I made myself a list of all the things I'm really good at. And I went out to the people who do what I want to do, who make canteens. And I said, okay, what do the canteen people do, and what are their profiles? And look, I matched there. And then I called 3 of them and said, I want to get into the canteen business. And they said, fine, I'll connect you. I mean, it's like, they're so facile that you're kind of like, God, I couldn't even do that. Like, I don't have the guts to just like, hey, I want to be a surgeon.
You know what? What's so awesome about that story, Lesley, we were just talking, and I know the canteen's made up, but I think it reflects a lot of the stories that you hear on Covey Club and just in your life and other places. Is that it really is about taking that first step and that first action. And it doesn't have to be huge. You have to uproot your life to reinvent yourself. And I love the canteen one, because I love the idea of like, I want to get into this, so I'm going to call somebody and see where it goes. Like, you never know, and it may go nowhere. But I think in reinvention, there's an action part that people need to take. And I think
action. Yes.
Yeah. And I think what stops us is like, we try to get from A to Z. Let's just get to B first, and then we'll get to C. And then, you know what? When you get to D, you find out that Z isn't what you wanted. Actually, it's a little bit different. So I think you need to experiment to even figure it out.
One of the things that I learned working in this space is that the biggest stopper for people getting started is that change looks like a mountain. And so every day you say, oh, yeah, I want to do that, but like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know how to begin. I don't know. And that keeps you at the base of the mountain, right? You're never ever going to even put on an outfit that's going to get you up to the first step. So I became a Tiny Habits coach for that reason. And I use it in Covey Club. And we have Tiny Habits coaching on a regular basis. And we also put it into we have a thing called the Academy, which is 400 previously recorded classes that you can start on today if you want to. But I do a lot of that because I want to teach people how to chop this stuff up into tiny little pieces. It's kind of like, I don't know if you ever saw the series Dexter, where he was, chopping. Yes. So it's kind of like that. It's like you take that mountain and you chop it up into little pieces, and you do something. We have 30-day challenges for that reason, where we band together on things like finances. We have a group called Financially Fierce, and it's like, oh, who wants to deal with your finances? Who wants to find all those pages? Who wants to it's like, oh my God, what a headache. But if you do it, we create these programs for 30 days. and we run them together, and we all work together, and we meet once a week, and we come back, and you get a prompt every day about what you're doing. And my whole thing is 5 minutes a day, whatever it is, the piles of papers in your office, it's the 1,000, line to-do list. It's the, I want to, go into real estate because I got to get out of being a lawyer and I don't know where to start. It's the, for the 5-minute thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a call to Tamara, who happens to be the top real estate person in my town. And I'm just going to ask her, what do you have? What are the skills? And tomorrow I'm going to make, a 5-minute thing online, and I'm going to go follow 5 people in the real estate business. It is 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. The reason why we don't do stuff is because it's, instead of going into your office, which is a mess, and saying, oh my God, I got to spend a month here cleaning it up. If you literally do 5 minutes and say that was your task was 5 minutes, and then you give yourself a pat on the back for 5 minutes, it creates momentum, and it creates a positive feeling inside of you that makes you want to go back to the next 5 minutes. And you can't sit there and say, well, if I don't spend an hour, I'm a failure. Or if I don't spend all day, I'm a failure. So literally by 5-minute increments, I use the example of, you want to be a runner. You want to get out there and finally exercise. If you've never run before, if you run just your block the first day, 3 minutes, your block, one side of the block, not around the block, one side. The next day you do a side, 2 sides. By the end of a month, you're a runner.
Yeah.
You've run several miles. So there's a lot of techniques for getting you through that barrier of change is hard and scary and difficult. It's actually easier if you chop it up into little bits. It's also easier if you do it with other people who are in the process of change, because they will tell you, they'll give you momentum. They will tell you it's not as hard as you think. And if you have a big dream, it's not as far away as you think, and you're not crazy.
And I think, so I want to ask you about that. So let me back up. First of all, for those listening, really think about small habits that you could implement, because I believe in the power of that 5 minutes. I think it is, anytime there is something that I want to tackle, but I say I don't want to, but really that stems from fear or some other reason, right? There's something deeper going on usually.
Yes.
And I can find every reason to not do it. Like, I've got to prepare for the podcast. I've got to get out these assessments to people. I have to, right? Fill in the blank. There's something I can be doing. But 5 minutes, everybody has 5 minutes. Yeah. And I think what I found along the way is that feeling of control that you get and confidence in yourself starts to compound too. So it's not just that you're getting momentum. That's a big part of it. It's also that you start to believe more in yourself about taking control of whatever that is that you're trying to, that mountain that you're trying to get up, because you start to see the progress in these smaller increments, and you feel good that you did it. You did what you said you're going to do.
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. And confidence is a lot to do with it, because, you have to be confident that you can change. And change, remember, change is also frightening to the human animal. I call it the brain is what biologically set to protect you. And I call it dinosaur at the door, right? Yeah. Your brain would rather you be safe with what you know than to step out anywhere with anything that you don't know. Once you understand that your brain is just simply trying to protect you, so that all that negative, like when you think, oh, maybe I should make hair ties because I see a big business there. And then your brain goes, somebody, if there were hair ties, if it was a big thing, somebody else would have done it. And you're like, yeah, you're right. And that's your brain saying, don't try, danger, Will Robinson, danger out there, the cave, there might be a dinosaur, blah, blah, blah. Once you realize that your brain's going to say that, doesn't mean it's true.
Right. It's probably not true, actually.
Yeah, doesn't mean it's true.
So what's interesting about that to me too, while you're saying it, I think it's so important for all of us to hear is, I think, so, we've got this thing called the reticular activating system. So I call it the brick wall. The brick wall's job is to only let in what already validates what you currently believe to be true. So not new ideas, right? It pushes out new ideas, new thinking, new perspectives. So when you're trying to change, to your point, your brain is a little bit working against you in this funny way. And one of the things I found with reinvention, particularly for those of us who have some years, we're at level 51 in my age, is, you'll try something, you'll like put a new idea out there, you'll launch a product, and you won't get sales right away, or you won't get views on TikTok, or whatever your measurement is. And then your brain goes, see,
I told you
so. But when I look at people who are successful, the one thing they have in common is persistence. So we have to that first validation is BS, and we kind of have to know that. If I know that going into it, I'll keep pushing through. Otherwise, I'll let my brain take over and go, told you, Tamara, that was a horrible, I told you nobody would want that idea.
Yeah. And also what I love about our digital life, unlike, you have to realize I lived for 40 years in a world of, you placed your bet and it was printed, and then the world was not, that was it. You had no way. What I love about digital is, I'll come up with some crazy idea. I want to do blah, blah, blah. We'll put it out there. No one goes. I get rid of it. No one's going to remember. Yeah. It's fabulous. I love it. It's like, it was a failure. Yeah. All right. And then
you probably learned something.
I learned something, gee, I thought they wanted to do this. They didn't. And then weird stuff, like somebody mentions, like we started doing speed networking. Someone mentioned it to me and I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's try to figure that out. My good friend ChatGPT and I worked on that. We did our first networking event, and it was explosive. People are so crazy for it. We're doing it every single month.
Love it.
And I was like, who knew?
Well,
you never know what's going to take off, right?
I haven't yet gone to one, although I love the idea of it. And I have to tell you, I loathe networking events because most people don't know what to say or how to hold a conversation, and it's very awkward. Now, like you, I'm assuming you're the same way. I happen to be good at holding a conversation because it's what I was in advertising on Madison Avenue before this, right? Like my life has been about relationship building, but when you get to those things, it's like, you got to ask questions. You have to find something in common. You have to it's so exhausting to do that for people. So to have a speed dating where you're like, you have purpose, you have intent, right? You have a little bit of facilitation, you have time. Yes. Oh, what a relief. Actually. That just makes me feel happy.
Oh, it's fabulous. And we give you what to talk about. So you already know. And it works out beautifully. And some of it's funny and some of it's serious. And people were crazy for it. And it was like one of the easier, that the hilarious part is you build these businesses, Tamara, and you spend all this time researching this thing and you build it out and you have somebody look at it and they like that one. And then there's something that you come up with overnight and they like it better.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right. Whatevs.
I know. Hey, but that, to your point, that's the beauty of the world we're in. Cause we could probably do a whole different podcast on things that are no longer the way they are, which cause I grew up on Madison Avenue, right? And Young and Rubicam. And and so I your tagline, whoa, that mattered. And it mattered for the next 18 months once all the media was purchased and bought and it was set. So if you created something that bombed, you were waiting a whole cycle to figure it out.
Oh God. Yeah.
And the KPIs were actually lagging because you couldn't really tell. It wasn't like an ad went out and suddenly sales at the grocery store, Chef Boyardee went up, right? You had to that actually was one of the one I worked on, ravioli.
Chef Boyardee. Oh, how funny.
Dude, I love that campaign.
That's very funny.
That was one of my favorite times of my young career. But anyway, so that's a whole different podcast, I feel like, of things that are no longer that way.
Yeah.
The question I want to, just before we run out of time, I want to ask you about, because I've heard you talk about this, is you talk about having a pivot plan in your back pocket. So I'd love to hear about that. And part of, maybe this is not kind of what you mean by it, but I've had colleagues recently in layoffs, it's going around with the tech companies. Some of them had been at their companies for many, many, many years. It came as a surprise. I think even stability is not stable anymore, So maybe that's not where you were headed with it, but when I thought about those people.
No, it's exactly that. Because when I opened up Covey Club, I would have a lot of people. I had a lot of friends in publishing, a lot of friends in the beauty business. And my whole idea with Covey was to connect you with women and start working on your what was going to be next for you 2 years in advance was the idea. Like, you know, like I'm getting older and I know that I can't make it to the next level, or I'm bored with being a lawyer, so I'm going to want to get out in a few years. Well, of course, people do things. It's the FedEx world, right?
Yeah.
So we do things at the last minute. So I would get all these people like November 25th calling me and, you know, standing in the hallway going, I think I'm about to be fired. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? And I'd be like, yes, we can help you, but gosh, I wish you were here 2 years ago to work on this. And
yeah.
well, certainly we can help you. But the idea is to plan ahead. This is a very tumultuous time. It is tumultuous for everybody. Who knew that Google was going to lay people off? Who knew that tech was going to lay people off? You have to assume that this churning and this constant reinvention is going to be required of you, whoever you are. This is just where we are. This is no longer the world that, you know, my husband's father grew up in. He worked in one place, he got the gold watch, and he left.
Yes.
This doesn't exist. Yep. And you must have other ideas. You must have, you know, a side hustle. You must have something else that you've already cultivated that potentially could be something for you in the future. You cannot be a single, what do you want to call it? Single sector person, which is good for you because you're going to be a more interesting human if you have other interests. But you cannot rely on it. Even, I mean, look at these people, you know, and I had plenty of these people when I started Covey Up. They're like, oh, you know, I've been working for this bank for 22 years. They love me. And then I would get back on the train and they'd be like, oh, we got bought. And they want to move to Canada.
And now we're redundant.
Yeah. And it's like, it's nothing to do with you. It doesn't have to do with they love you or you're doing a good job or bad job. Look at Silicon Valley Bank. They went home on Friday and they were fired on Monday. Like, it's not about you. It's about the world we live in is moving. And of course, no one wants to take that protection. It's like, oh, I'm so busy. I'm so tired. I can barely get dinner on the table. But you must have other interests and you must have other things you can sell with. And there are many, many ways at Covey Club. We have it all on the site. You know, you can do things on your weekends. You can do things in your evenings. You need to have other interests, which will make you a more
connections.
Yes. And you can't be gone on LinkedIn for 10 years or 5 years. And then the day you lose your job, go, hey,
I'm here.
How's it going?
Yeah.
There's all stuff like this. You must be, I'm not going to say it's not exhausting. It sure would have been nice to be in the old world where you had your job, you went home and, you know, that was it. And you were on the glide path. So, but you must be out there. You must be cultivating. You must be on your social media. You must have other interests. You must have lots of connections. And now today, one of the big things that I want to do a big, huge thing on is why women 50 plus are having a hard time getting rehired. Because a lot of that has to do with not keeping up. There's many, many issues, which has to do with these, you know, with the computers looking at resumes and sexism and blah, blah, blah. So we're going to talk about that. But a lot of it is people are very comfortable. They know they get comfortable and they stop working on their connections and they stop going to events and they stop being out there and then kaboom, crap happens, right?
Well, and I looked at your perspective on this. So I'm not a fan of burn the boats and, you know, close all the doors so the other door will open. I think that we need to be working in a way that keeps us making good decisions. And I guess I'm not being very clear, but I guess I'm saying this more from an entrepreneur perspective of I meet a lot of women in particular who have brilliant ideas. So they just want to like burn the boats and go, but we have families to support or, you know, whatever, right? We have lives and we have responsibilities, frankly. Once you get past 25, you start to have responsibilities. So I'm more of a fan of like, hey, why don't we keep both those doors open for now? And let's move into a place where this door can be open full time, but let's give you that sense of security because you'll actually make better decisions.
Right.
And there'll be some pain because it might mean some long nights. There'll be some pain on the front end, but it pays off, I think, to do it that way on the back end. I feel like that's a little bit with what you're saying too around like, keep yourself out there, keep yourself connected. Because that is the world that we're in, whether we we don't have to like it, but that is it. And frankly, I think it's exciting because it means that we can get up that mountain any way we choose. I don't know that there's a set path anymore. And for someone like me, that's like, yes, I'm going to like chop down the tree, create my own path. Well, not chop down trees because I love trees, but you know what I mean.
No, but that's one of the things. I went back when publishing was clearly failing. 2 years, 3 years before they closed More, which was my last magazine, I decided to go back to school in sustainability. I thought, where could I segue to? Since publishing was obviously in trouble across town at timing, they were firing people 400 at a time every quarter. I was like, I'm not going to go. Even if I could, who wants to? It's the most depressing thing to be in a declining industry. It's awful. Fire people who are good at their jobs and you have to be the axe person. It's horrible. So I went back to school up at Columbia. I got my master's in sustainability management, thinking I'll segue into the beauty business. And I got it at night. It took me 6 years. And the best thing about it was that they pulled the plug on More 2 years too early. So I didn't have my degree. And I launched Covey Club because my readers came to me and said, do something else for us. They were so pissed off that the magazine went away. So I would work on both at night. And I was like, I don't know where this is going to take me. I don't know if like Covey Club's going to be anything, but I'm going to finish this degree in case it's not. And the most amazing thing that happened was going to get the degree this was the really surprising thing. I was very frustrated at my job. It was very depressing because anytime you would ask to do something new, we did that, done that, can't do that, can't find the money, can't do. So like you could do no innovation. They were just willing to like let it all, they were circling the drain. They didn't want to change. They didn't want to try anything. I mean, they did not want to try anything new, which is really frustrating if you're somebody who knows you're in trouble and you want to try new stuff. Going and getting my degree, that's where I learned to do everything new. It also exercised a new part of my brain. It got me up on technology. Like I was completely shocked that you no longer stand in line for the registrar. It's all done online. I had to learn.
All online.
So an awful lot, even though I'm not in sustainability, an awful lot of what I learned that was digital, about how to deal with digital, what was going on in the world. From there, I was able to apply to Covey Club. I would not have been digitally savvy at the right level because I was dealing with 20-year-olds. They were, it was like, okay, now we're going to do this, use this app. I'm like, what app? What are you talking about? So it pushed me and it saved me in the end, because when it came out that Covey was where I was going to go, I knew so much more than if I had just been sitting there coming out of regular old publishing.
Yeah.
So you don't know what's going to lead to your next step. But sometimes when you see that where you are is in trouble, or it's going away, or it's in, you have to be honest with yourself if your industry is in trouble. And then you have to take action. And sometimes it's going back to school. And you can prepare a couple years ahead of time. And again, like I didn't end up in sustainability management. I might do something with that down the road. But the side effect of that was hugely impactful for my business.
It's exactly going back to curiosity and involvement. I feel like it all. So I know we're basically out of time, but I've got a couple questions in that are all in the same vein. So that tells me that people really need to hear the answer to this. So let's ask. So I got about 3 or 4 in that are asking, in essence, what do I do if I'm trying to push people forward to embrace change, and I've got people above me and below me who are resisting everything that we're talking about?
Ooh, above and below.
Oh man.
Ooh. Yeah. You may not get anywhere if you're getting it above and below, unfortunately. That may be, I don't know if there's a way for you to solo work on change where you are, if you're like in a middle management kind of thing. A lot of times we talk about intra or inter corporation, coming up with new ideas within the organization yourself. Sometimes they'll let you do stuff, unfunded. They'll let you explore a new way of doing something. that may be a way. But if you've got it from both sides and they're not moving for change, unfortunately, that may not be a good place. I think you have to have a groundswell from the bottom, or you have to have people on top who are listening. It's very hard to change people at the top. I'm telling you from being in a very unchanged, these people were watching the demise of an entire sector and they did nothing.
Yeah.
And I I was fairly high up, but I wasn't the top. I wasn't the CEO or anything. They weren't moving. Look what happened. You don't see magazines anymore, right? They just let it go. Not what I would have done.
Yeah, I mean, some people, the challenge with change is it's very personal, right? It really, the thing that I try to remember is the person who's resisting probably feels like they're on thin ice because they feel like their identity is being attacked. That doesn't justify their behaviors necessarily.
Could be.
But that's really the reason I found that people resist it. It's not because they think that your idea is bad. It's because they feel like they're on thin ice.
Or they're compensated not to change. That's what happened.
Right, good point.
Is the compensation never changed. What happened is we were being attacked by the internet, and what you saw was the people on the business side of publishing were still being paid by how many print ads they sold.
Yeah.
They were not being paid to bring in digital advertising. So if you don't change the compensation, where are they going to go? They're going to keep bringing in the thing that if the people above them don't see the future and the money is not in the right place.
Yeah, I agree. The compensation is the whole thing I hadn't really thought about if you're not incentivized to change, why, if your money's rolling in the way it is, why would you
if you're incentivized not to change?
Yeah. The money, and I think of change sometimes like a rubber band. I think, and this is a little bit of advice to the people that ask that, but I think when we're the ones who want to be the change makers, we want to pull that rubber band really, really loose, right? We want it to be really we've got a big idea and we know it's the right thing to do. We're frustrated that nobody sees it. And we have to remember that sometimes that rubber band needs to be stretched a lot because every single time it stretches, it won't go back to as tight as it was in the beginning. So you'll make a little bit of progress, So I think sometimes on our end, setting our expectations to know that I'm going to ask to pull the rubber band really far, knowing that I'm going to get this much. But if I keep doing that, all those little stretches of the rubber band, then the rubber band's loose. Yeah. So, but that's an expectation and accountability that we have to have when dealing with upper management to say, okay, I'm not going to get the full rubber band stretch. I know that, but I'm going to ask for it because if all I get is one little thing, I'm moving in that direction.
Right. Yeah. And people are resistant to change.
Very.
And they're afraid because what they're doing is working, as I say, dinosaur at the door. Anytime you step out, it could be, you could be eaten. So better to stay here where we know what's going on.
Well, no, I always say to people don't fear change, but they fear being changed. And that's ultimately what happens, right? Because it's us. It's us. We're humans. It's us. Lesley, this has been amazing. What's your final piece of advice for everybody out there?
Well, what I think is change is going to come and you may as well embrace it. We can't run from change. Nobody can run from change. Look at the world out there. We're in this.
It just is
moment of change. It is happening. So you can't run from it. So you may as well be part of the change. And the great thing about change is if you can be one of the drivers of change in your area or your family or your life or whatever, it feels a lot better than what you said is being the fearful person whose change is coming to you and you're going to be, forced to change.
Yeah.
Try to be part of the change. Try to be part of the change maker. The world is changing and it's faster and faster because of the digital and the way that we deal. Whereas change came very slowly in the past. Yeah. It's not going to slow down. It's going to get faster. If you notice with AI, it's going insanely fast.
Insanely.
So we need to be part of it. We need to be part of it and get on that horse. It's better to get on the horse than to have the horse run over you. That's,
Unfortunately, those are your two options. I feel like there's no just hanging out. Either the horse is trampling over you or you're on it and it's good.
Direct the horse,
Well, and Lesley, what you were saying before too, just for everyone out there thinking about that, oh my God, that still sounds scary.
It is scary.
Yeah. And we live in a time of experimentation. So you can get on that horse and maybe veer it in a little bit of the wrong direction, but you can get it right back. We know on our websites within hours what's working and not working. So
I love it. That's what I love it. You can find out right away. I used to have to wait, Tamara, 3 months to get information about my magazine, who read a page, and it was not even pushing. You couldn't really tell. It was people remembering what pages they looked at.
Right. It was It was like focus group, quantitative.
Instant. It's wonderful. You can tell if you're messing up. You can turn around. You can move. You can change. You can make another change. That's what's cool about it. Yeah. I mean, I think is that you get instant feedback. Whether you screw up, you get bad instant feedback, you can stop.
Yeah. And and to be clear to everybody out there, I've had a lot of negative responses to things that I've done. It doesn't all work.
I've screwed up. People are like, why did you take away this? Or why are you doing that? Or you should do it this way, or you should do it that way. And I'm like, okay, game on. Let's try. Let's see what happens.
I don't know if you've discovered this, Lesley. Here's what I've found so far to be true. When I have screwed up, or when I have, like a couple months ago, I launched something. I put the sales page up before I finished creating the assets, thinking I'd always be one step ahead of people. So it'd be okay. Like I knew what I was doing, but I time-wise, to deliver it. And I didn't. I screwed up. But what I found is that people are more accepting of mistakes than they've ever been. Your customers, your bosses, because nobody else knows what they're doing either. So like I went to them and I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You were one step ahead of me and I thought I would be ahead of you and I'm not. So can you give me a week and I will, give you this bonus? People were like, oh, no problem, Tamara. It's no big deal. We're just excited, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, and they're like, also, while you're here, can you change this? I'm like, oh, great idea. People are willing to allow you to make mistakes in a way that they weren't 10 years ago.
And probably if they are not the right people for you to be doing business with, because everybody makes mistakes, especially today. And, and then mistakes happen. Look at Delta Airlines. That's taken them, a week to get back on top of something that everybody else was able to get on top of right away. So,
but that whole thing, right? One code push out brought down the airline.
That was actually, that made, this is terrible to say, but it made me feel really good. Like these are the experts,
they pushed the button.
Experts of the WHO CrowdStrike.
Yeah.
They screwed up. So what do you expect of little old me and my little thing? I'm going to screw up. Like somebody that big screws up. I mean,
and guess what? They're back up. It's all fine.
It's okay. It's okay.
So all right, Lesley, this has been, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fantastic. And I will put a link to Covey Club so everyone can get it through our show notes and all our
fabulous. Come join us. And we have social media everywhere as Covey Club, and come see what we're about. Get on the newsletter, and then you'll understand who we are. And we'd love to have you if you want to make some change with some fabulous women like Tamara and me, who want to help you get to where you're going.
I love it.
Take care.
Thank you.